So based on my experience on the first day and also where I think the meta is going to go, these are the decks I predict will be the best after the nerfs, and the first one is going to be Beast Hunter. It was already like the third highest win rate deck from Diamond through Legend before the nerfs, and some of its, more difficult matchups like Fell Demon Hunter that could get the ball rolling a little bit quicker, and Control Warrior, which could gain an absolute crap load of armor, were both nerfed, which means Beast Hunter is in prime position to basically become the number 1 or number 2 deck. It's pretty fast because you do have a couple of viable plays early, then you can close out the game really well late with a ton of big minions as long as the Ambassador Phelan to give you some extra colossal minions, and ultimately it's just strong every phase of the game, has good mana cheat, and has very few weaknesses in the meta. Next is going to be Mech Paladin. Mech Paladin is in a very similar boat to the Hunter deck because it was number 2 before the nerfs actually went live, and even though it did get nerfed, which is why I don't think it will be number 1, Cariel isn't really the thing that won the game for Mech Paladin. What won the game for Mech Paladin was a ton of resource generation and draw from things like the Radar Detector, tons of giant Divine Shield minions, being able to give all of your minions Divine Shield with the Bubble Bot, and then super late game maybe finishing off your opponent with Cariel if the game goes that far. So overall, this deck really lost nothing. It's going to do pretty well into the decks that are currently in the meta. And against OTKs, Cariel is still going to be quite useful because having the damage from basically any OTK is really, really good. So the next deck is going to be a Midrange Shaman. You could run this in multiple different ways. This is just the one that I was personally going to play soon because somebody used it to get to rank 1 legend. But you could run multiple different ones as well. You could run Burn, you could run the Rainbow Shaman that I played, which had big spells. As long as it has Snowfall Guardian to disrupt board-based decks and Mutanus to disrupt combos, you will most likely win, as well as having some mana cheat and decent mid-range minions to just apply pressure. You'll most likely win because you're either going to be playing against heavy board-based decks like Mech Paladin, as well as Beast Hunter, and you can freeze them and just overwhelm them with giant minions, or you're going to play against a more combo, slower deck, and you can eat some of their win conditions with Mutanus, and you're just going to win, and it's going to be very annoying for your opponent. It's going to be really strong. Again, play whatever variation you want. Maybe if you have some legendaries or some cards for one variation, not the other. It's up to you, but just mid-range Shaman in general. As much as I hate to say it, I think that Boar Priest is going to be a top 5 deck. I absolutely despise this deck. I don't think it's very fun, but it's going to be very strong because a lot of the most problematic things for this deck have in fact been nerfed, and when I say that, I just mean strong decks. Like, strong decks can abuse the hell out of this, but if they're not strong or they take a little while to get the ball rolling, Boar Priest is able to just generate enough value and finish their sword quest, whatever, by turn 8 or 9, and then just win the game. So, with most other decks just in general becoming weaker, I think Boar Priest is in a prime position to dominate the meta. You could also maybe do the same with Quest Priest, although it's slower, but I think it's a little bit more versatile, and I will be trying out Quest Priest as well in the future, but I think Boar Priest is probably better in the short term. So the last deck on this list is sadly Mine Rogue, and you might be wondering why sadly, and it's just because I don't really like uninteractive decks like Mine Rogue that can combo off and win the game as early as turn 6 to turn 10, somewhere around that range. And the reason it's going to be strong is, yes, it was nerfed with the Wild Pawn Knoll, but that's not how you win the game. I mean, still playing a free 3-5 with Rush to keep a combo deck alive for an extra turn or two is still really, really good, and the deck's biggest weaknesses were against very hard aggressive decks that could blow you out of the water early, or heavy armor gaining decks. And with Druid and Warrior being nerfed in terms of armor, and Naga Demon Hunter being nerfed in terms of aggro, it is the perfect storm for a deck like Mine Rogue as well as Boar Priest to become absolutely dominant in the meta. And without armor gain like at all, this deck can pretty easily do 32 to 44 damage on turn 8 depending on card draw, especially if you have the Snowfall Graveyard out. So for the most part, this deck will have the ability to kill almost any class in the game, so definitely feel free to try this deck out. Overall, I do think that these are going to be the best decks just on my early predictions based on where I think the meta is going to go, but I will come out with a probably more refined tier list, probably with a couple more decks on Monday or maybe next Thursday after there's been like one whole week of this new patch. I'll give you guys a probably better tier list, but for right now, these are what I think are going to be good. These are what I think are gonna see a lot of play. And who knows, maybe you guys can come up with some sort of hidden meta breaker that can beat all of these 5 decks, and that'll be on my list next week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.